Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode number 27 of the For Animals, For Earth podcast. We call it podcast, and it's just as much a video cast. And I haven't quite figured out what the right word for that is, but for now, we'll say episode 27 of the For Animals, For Earth podcast. Today, I'm joined by Laura Vena from Blockhead Brigade. Hi, Laura.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Before we get started, some quick housekeeping things to just run through with everybody. A reminder that this month in January, our charity of the month is Blockhead Brigade. So what we're doing is jumping over and finding them on social media and just following, liking, sharing, donating if you want. Just do something to support Blockhead Brigade this month. All of the links are in the description for today's video. And the second thing is we have, as part of the charity of the month, we're donating $5 for everything sold in the Etsy shop. So anyone who purchases anything over there, $5 is going to Blockhead Brigade. And also we're doing a giveaway on Instagram for one of our kids' tees. So if you have any interest in entering that, jump over there and all the details are there. The last thing I want to tell you about is that we have launched our 5-day conscious lifestyle challenge. And this is something that is for people who are just looking to explore new, simple ideas that they could try in their lives to make a difference. We hit on all different aspects of life, from food to fashion to volunteering, lots of different things. So if you're interested in that, it's free. You just sign up with your email. It's at foranimalsforearth.com/lifestyle challenge. So let's dig into our interview today. I'm so excited. Laura is joining me. She's the founder and creative director of Blockhead Brigade, which is a community organization located in Long Beach, California, that advocates for Pitbulls. And one thing I really love about your organization is that it's called Blockhead Brigade. And I learned from you that a pit bull isn't always what we think a pit bull is. So I thought maybe we could kick off with why you use the word blockheads instead of pit bulls.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, Brandy. I'm so happy to be here with you. So blockhead, I've always liked that term because I feel like there's so much confusion around the term pit bull, and because there's so much misidentification of dogs when they get to the shelter or when they're out in society. And so I really liked the word blockheads because, first of all, pit bull is an umbrella term. It's often used as an umbrella term for a variety of breeds like American Pit Bull Terrier, American Staffordshire Terrier, American Bullies, Staffordshire Bull Terriers, and sometimes even American Bulldogs. So, and within that, there's, so much variety in look and background and stuff like that. But I became very interested in how dogs were being judged by that term, by pit bull. So when they're in the shelter, I mean, you have no way to know what their breed is, and there's a pretty good chance they're mixed. So, but these dogs that end up in the shelter or that are out in the community that have the blocky headed shaped heads, right? They're the ones who are discriminated against. So they're the ones I fight for. They're the ones, I remember there was one dog that was clearly a mix. I mean, I wouldn't have even called him a pit bull, but he actually got thrown out of his house because of the HOA restrictions on pit bulls. So any dog that kind of resembles a blocky headed dog, for me, those are the dogs that I fight for because of that discrimination. So,
I love that. And I love how right off the bat, we can talk about the fact that what we sometimes think is a pit bull may not be a pit bull, and what we sometimes classify as a certain type of dog may not actually be that type of dog. And I don't only mean by breed, but I mean by temperament and just the whole thing that we stereotype a lot of times with different types of dogs. And I'm curious, even for listeners and people joining us today, me myself, when you first hear the word pit bull, how do you react? And I'm just asking this question for people to ask themselves as we jump into this interview, because do you feel scared? Do you feel like, oh, I just want to play? Like, what do you feel? Because I think there are so many myths out there about pit bulls and about the visual of a block-headed dog that really lead to a lot of discrimination in ways that we don't even understand. And I know that's what you're alluding to as you started to talk about it. So I definitely would like to get into some of those misconceptions today, and maybe we can grow some new advocates in our audience, is my hope. So what would you say? I don't know if this is going to be possible to say the number one, but what do you think is the most common misconception about block-headed dogs?
Okay, so my number one is probably different than most people's.
Okay.
My number one misconception about pit bulls is that they are unloved, that people don't like them.
Mhm.
I find that even among advocates and sheltering volunteers and rescues and shelter directors, that they assume that people don't like pit bulls, that people don't love pit bulls. But to me, and I'm sure people, if anybody's ever heard me before, they've heard me say this, if people didn't love pit bulls, there wouldn't be so many in the shelter, because at one point somebody wanted that dog, right? So we
Mm.
have to look at why, and we also have to look at statistics of why they are in the shelter. But if they weren't popular and people didn't love them, they wouldn't be around. They wouldn't breed them. They wouldn't be selling them or making money off of them. And please spay and neuter your dogs, please, because pit bulls have huge litters. And yeah, let's spay and neuter our dogs, please. But yeah, if people didn't love them, why are there so many out there? That's
Mm.
my number one misconception. I could talk about other misconceptions, but that's the one that I feel does the most damage to the dogs.
Wow. Yeah, that's yeah, that's really, really interesting, because I can see that. As you say, people think that they're not loved, and I can see that. I can feel that, how there is this thought that pit bulls are somehow like a different kind of dog than other dogs that people have as pets. And
Right.
I can see why that would lead to a big problem. And I love just the simple thing you said of, there wouldn't be so many of them in the shelter if they weren't loved by people.
Right.
And I know I saw data that said about 40% of the dogs in shelters are pit bulls. And
Yes.
I mean, that I certainly feel like that's what I've seen, at least in the shelters here in California that I've volunteered in. Um, I wonder, can you share some of the qualities that people really do love about pit bulls? Let's share some of the qualities that, this is very stereotypical as well. I mean, we're saying, oh, here's all the great qualities of pit bulls. And that's a very stereotypical thing to say, because every dog is so unique. But why don't you tell me, what are the things you love about your dogs? Let's do
Okay. So, of course, we're going to talk later about how all dogs are individuals. And I think we have to be careful about portraying all pit bulls as, dogs you would carry in your arms like a little baby. So we have to be careful about those two, because every dog is an individual, just like people, right? And they have the things that make them joyous, the things that make them scared. So with that said, of course, when I see a pit bull out and about, the skies open up and the sun shines down on them, and I get such a big smile because I love them. I love them, and I'm sure that part of that is because they are kind of an underdog, and I've always been for the underdog. But for me, my dogs are they're very loving and engaged, and they're a part of my family. They're very friendly. So I think the typical, like, it. I don't want to stereotype, but a lot of people, temperament tests have shown, And United Kennel Club has said that these are very friendly dogs, that they're people friendly and that they love people. So while I want to be careful to not stereotype them or say that they're all like that, it seems to be very common to the breed to love people. So I mean, I think they're beautiful, and I think it's hilarious that, to me, they are often clowns in a dog suit. So again, while I don't want to stereotype, and dogs come in all shapes and sizes and temperaments, for me, I just like it. It's funny. I'm sure that somebody, if they were to see my dogs in the backyard, in the rare times that they are in the backyard when I'm not out there, but if they saw them and they were looking to, do something like steal from somebody, they'd probably go to the next house. And that kind of cracks me up because my dogs are cartoon characters to me. They're kind of wusses, but that people have that impression because they're these big, muscly, strong dogs. So I love how sporty my dogs are. I love dogs who are active. And I love that they are loving and accepting of people. My dogs are dog tolerant, which is to me the best thing. I'd rather have a dog tolerant dog than a dog friendly dog, which we could talk about later maybe. But yeah, I just love them. They're cartoon characters, and they're quirky, and they have their own needs, and we try to meet them as best as we can to make them as balanced as they can be. So yeah.
I love that attitude and philosophy, and I think that it's something we can all strive for as, dog I don't want to say dog owners. Yeah, dog stewards. I was like, I don't want to say dog owner, dog partners. Dog something families. We can all strive for to create an environment for them where they get to thrive with their own personality. I know that you like to point to a lot of scientific evidence, so I thought something that would be kind of fun for us throughout this conversation is to do a little pop quiz for everybody who's listening and people who are watching. So the first question I have for you, it's multiple choice. You can ask yourself. If you want to comment, you can. Which breed is the friendliest? A beagle, B, a golden retriever, or C, a pit bull? All right, Laura, so I'm going to let you answer this. Who's friendliest, beagle, golden retriever, or pit bull? And
pit bull. Pit bull. And I'm not just saying that. So the American Temperament Test Society has a test that gauges it tests dogs' behavior towards humans. So it tests for aggression, it tests for friendliness, it tests for fear. And typically, pit bulls are one of the highest. They score in the top 23% in regards to behavior towards humans. So I didn't want to stereotype them as being good with people, but it is often true that the dogs, the testing has found that they're very, very friendly with people. I think they're like 87%. I'm sure I have this statistic right here. They're right above golden retrievers. So, when people think, when they think bad thoughts about pit bulls, or you hear the comments all the time when you're walking your dogs. I will say Long Beach is very pit bull friendly, so I don't get it so much here. But every once in a while, you'll hear a comment, and I just think about what people with golden retrievers would do if people were saying these things about their dogs. They'd be shocked. So that's how a lot of people feel when people make these kind of disparaging remarks about the dogs. Because typically speaking, they do test very, very high. So yeah.
I like that you're pointing that out, because that's something that any of us can try to catch in our own behavior. Is if we're walking down the street and we see someone walking a blockheaded dog, a pit bull lookalike, we don't need to perpetuate the stereotype. You know, we don't need to go up and engage, but we also don't need to run across to the other side of the street. And I think that just
Yeah.
that's something very simple that we can do to help kind of mitigate a bit of the stereotype that's out there. Because it's funny when you say, yeah, I mean, how often do you think of a golden retriever and think, oh, little kids and playing and, you
Right.
know, just this perception we have of them.
Yeah.
And often a different perception with pit bulls, yet pit bulls test as friendlier. And I think that's probably a surprise for a lot of people. It was for me when I heard it first from you. I think that it's a really cool statistic.
Yeah, and it's honestly, I believe that it's all marketing. Pit bulls have had bad marketing, you know, it's media, and um, I think it's you know, maybe more exciting to paint pit bulls as the bad guys often with media, and I think we might talk about that too. That you know I think it's been since the '80s that pit bulls have had this stigma attached to them. I do think that it's changed. I do think that it's gotten better. I hope it doesn't go too much. I don't want people to think that you should put a baby down on top of a pit bull. Now, people have to do what they think is right in their families, but you know, I'm all for treating, you know, even though my dogs are my family, I want to be careful about certain things because dogs do correct with their teeth sometimes, and stuff like that. So I don't think we need to stray too far. We just need to say that they're dogs like any other dogs. They're individuals just like any other individuals. And we have to really analyze these things that are in the media. And something you mentioned, Brandy, that's really, really important to me is the things that we say. You know, when we talk about people, we talk about microaggressions against people. The things that you say in everyday life impact, like long-term impact, the lives of others. They impact the dogs. They impact the families of the dogs who are from you know, listening to people talk poorly about their family members and feeling that you know, it's very upsetting, right? To things like housing, not being able to get housing with your dog. And if you don't have you know, a lot of let's say like you don't have a ton of money and you can't just go out and buy a house or get the most expensive apartment. These things you make really big difference, and it's kind of a life or death this, you know, like difference for the dogs. So these little things influence people's opinions, and then they influence policy. So we have to be careful. The word has a lot of power, and I don't know how much we realize that, but the word has a lot of power.
You know,
So
I definitely think that's true. And I think also we don't often realize how maybe just little, gosh, I don't even want to say conversations, just little points that we can bring up in our lives. Let me just paint a picture because this picture's in my head. I'm walking with my friend. We see a pit bull coming the other direction. And I just say to my friend, oh, did you know pit bulls are like tested as one of the friendliest? You know, something like that. And then we just keep going and we keep talking. And I'm just thinking that you never know, that friend of mine could be sitting in a meeting sometime and have the impact over the housing policy at an apartment, or they may tell a friend and that person could
mhm,
have the impact. And I think what I really love about just honestly, I get so excited about this podcast and the ability to have a conversation with somebody like you and
yeah,
to learn, and for all of us that are listening to learn these little things and to be able to bring them up in our lives and, you
yeah,
know, just send out those little ripples into the world of pit bulls are different than what you may think. And just, you never know where that's going to catch up with, like you said, a policy, a conversation, just the way that people are thinking. Um, when it comes to let's talk about housing discrimination.
okay.
Do you have any advice for people on anything that they can do to try to help that problem in their area? I suppose it could be as specific as I'm trying to get an apartment and I'm being rejected because of my dog, to I want to try to help policy in my area. Could you share some advice on that?
Absolutely. First, reach out to us, and because we're really trying, the brigade part of the language in Blockhead Brigade is that we're a community and we're only as strong as the people in our community. So I really rely on people like we're going to create a safety net. We're creating a safety net. So starting, reaching out to others who may be like-minded helps. Obviously going, contacting your city council members, doing things like that. There's a great organization called Animal Farm Foundation. I have a link to that on my Instagram. Animal Farm Foundation does a lot of advocacy, and they work a lot against breed restriction legislation and things like that. As far as with landlords, that's so hard because we're actually starting a program that is going to be reaching out to landlords directly and partnering with some bigger organizations, maybe some like housing insurance organizations and things like that, and trying to get them to help us convince people to at least treat the dog as an individual, meet the dog, get to know that dog, give them a chance. So, you can always, talk to people and try to make that happen. But I think that's it, is like these conversations are the only thing that you can do easily on a day-to-day basis. And then from there, you can start trying to affect policy. And something as small as, it's not that small. City council, reaching out to your city council members and talking to them about these things, even though they can't control what a landlord or a landlady decides to do, what a home, and a lot of them are big companies that have these breed restrictions. They can't necessarily control them, but having the problem or the issue in the public sphere is usually helpful. So, and having the facts to back that up. So just off the top of my head, those are the kinds of things I think that make a difference, because housing is a big deal. I think you can attack it from policy standpoint, and then conversations with people. So yeah.
Yeah, I think also, speaking from this space of every dog is an individual, I think that's also something that we can so easily like try to flip the switch in our heads and try to move away from classifying dogs as breeds and saying, okay, this
Yeah.
is kind of this temperament, this is what I prohibit, this is what I accept. If we just in our heads keep working on trying to see every single dog as a truly unique individual, and
Yes.
then perpetuating that out to the people around us, our friends, our council members, anybody we talk to, I really feel like that could go a long way too. You can just see how if everybody's mind changed like that, you would start to see where the landlord is meeting the dog and making a
Yeah.
decision based on a half hour interaction with a dog instead
Yeah.
of just based on breed.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Let's hit our pop quiz again. So
Let's do
you
it.
started to talk about this one. Let's dig into it more. So, true or false? The news proves that pit bulls are dangerous.
Okay, so that one's super interesting because there's all kinds of research on this and statistics that you can get from the National Canine Research Council. So it's a mouthful, but National Canine Research Council. I don't have a link up right now, but I will put a link up on our Instagram in our bio. So they have did a really extensive amount of research on how pit bulls were depicted in the media, and how the coverage of bad interactions between dogs and people were covered. So I'm going to actually look at this so I can quote it correctly. That they one of the things that they found is that a non-fatal attack by a pit bull type dog, so this is a bad interaction where there was some kind of a bite or something, but it wasn't fatal, was reported 230 times in many media outlets. Okay, so one particular incident that was not
Mhm.
fatal was
Okay.
reported 230 times, whereas a fatal or more serious attack by Labrador retrievers, and other breeds were reported by only one or two media outlets.
Mhm.
So, a lot of times they also found that in other studies that a dog's breed was misidentified. I've actually tracked that myself, more anecdotal on my part because I'm not doing a study, a peer-reviewed study like they are, but I've seen that before too, where the initial reports are that it was a pit bull, and then you find out it was a golden retriever or it was, something else. So they often also get blamed for things that they didn't do, and then also we could talk about the whole problem with visual breed identification too. But yes, there's you can see this. It must be more exciting to talk about an attack by a blockhead than some other dog. It's really important. I studied like media and stuff like that, and it's really important how you frame things and where you put your gaze or your look, right? So this is like hard evidence that there is bias. We all know there's bias in the media, right? I mean, we all know this now, right?
Really?
If we didn't know before, I mean, I've studied this stuff forever, so of course it's not a surprise to me, but we are biased. Humans are biased. So things that come out of our mouths are biased, and we can absolutely be more careful about what we say and about doing just a little bit of research to make sure that what we are saying is correct and based in fact.
Mhm.
So I just think that particular information, when you go and look at their studies, it's just remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating and something that you showed in I met Laura because she did a presentation for Pasadena Humane, and I just loved the presentation and felt like I learned so much. And something that you showed in that presentation was like a grid of like 25 dogs.
Oh yeah.
And she said, pick out the ones that are pit bulls. And you're looking through this thing and you're thinking, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. And then the answer was completely different. And I don't know if that's something that if people, maybe if you all contacted Laura after, you'd be able to see it yourself. But it's just something that's a really interesting and eye opening fact is just that we as humans, what we classify as a pit bull and think as a pit bull, and then is reported in the news and media as a pit bull, may not be a pit bull. So I think that's a
Yeah.
really, I think that was a really interesting thing to learn. And again, brings us back around to every dog as an individual. And they really are. A lot of them are mixed. Some of them
Yeah.
aren't, but even if they're not mixed, their personality is going to be different from the next, just like we are. We're all vastly different from each other, and we all have our unique things that make us up. And it's the same thing for dogs. I really love that message that you share. Um,
Yeah, Brandy, I just want to jump in right there because the funny thing about that, there's been so many studies. I liked that it was visual, but the one thing that was funny about that is there were only 3 of the dogs that had any pit bull in them, and I think none of them were pure pit bull. But the one that had like the most, I think, is a fluffy.
it's so
It's a
funny.
fluffy dog, and you're like, wait a minute, this is a Staffordshire, American Staffordshire Terrier, and the statistics are that visual breed identification. They've done a ton of tests on this. The National Canine Research Center and other people have done tests on this. Visual breed identification is wrong 70% of the time or more.
Mm. Wow.
So, and when we can talk about breed mixes too if we want to, but because once a dog is mixed, it's neither breed. It's
Mhm.
an entirely different thing, and you can't really look to the breed or to the parents necessarily to know about that dog. And even if you think about siblings in a family or sibling puppies,
Mm.
they have different personalities, right? So if you've ever been around a litter of puppies, they have distinct personalities.
Mm.
So that kind of helps also, I think, um, just support that idea that all dogs are individuals and that you have to look at that particular dog that's in front of you. The most progressive shelters don't use breed identification. I know that's tough because people love, their blockheads or they love this or that, but yeah, the most progressive ones know that you just can't tell unless you do a DNA test. So,
Ooh, I love that. I love
yeah,
that. That's really cool because it's then like a message coming out from the shelter out to hundreds, thousands of people that, you know
yes.
what, you really can't make a decision based on the breed. Yeah, that's really cool. Um, okay, pop quiz. Third
Pop
question. This is our
quiz.
last question. True or false? Pitbulls are the best breed for a guard dog. And I
Okay.
wonder what people are thinking to themselves in this one. Um, and then what
Okay.
is the answer?
Did I talk about I felt like I talked about this, but maybe I didn't. So,
We hit on it a teensy bit.
okay, so I'm gonna take two different paths or two different things that I want to talk about. First, the United Kennel Club does not think that pit bulls are good as guard dogs. They say they are not the best choice for a guard dog since they are extremely friendly, even with strangers. And the American Temperament Test Society, of course, has found that they're very friendly with people. But I think that I would probably add my underlying thing is again to look at the dog as an individual, but also I personally am not I'm not for using dogs as guard dogs. And I like to think of dogs as companions and family members, right? So so I think that any dog, when we talk about guard dogs, we tend to think about, dogs being protective or things like that. And I think that when it's a tough question for me because I think that a dog that is too protective maybe hasn't been socialized, and that's not always true. Dog could have experienced something or been traumatized. Um, I think that any dog who feels frightened or threatened, or who hasn't had a lot of socializing or has been mistreated in some way has a potential to be wary of humans.
Mhm.
So I know that there's a big distinction too that is made between resident dogs and their behavior and family dogs and their behavior. So a resident dog is a dog that lives on the property, doesn't live in the house, and doesn't have a lot of interaction with the people, with the family.
Mhm.
So I would say that a resident dog is more of what I maybe it's a bias on my part. I think of that as more as a guard dog, which to me is not ideal because dogs are they're pack animals, and when you talk about bite statistics and stuff like that, it's almost always an unfixed male that's a resident dog, regardless of breed.
Mm.
So I know I'm taking your question in a little bit of a different direction, but um, I think when you have a family, a dog as a family member, it's a completely different thing. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I remember I read this article once by a veterinarian in Humboldt who used to he did some survey. I wish I still had this article. He did a survey of the local shelter, and I don't know how they could figure out these numbers, but the statistics supposedly were very high on pit bulls that were turned in, that were being used as guard dogs for illicit activities because they were too friendly. Again, without having the article, it doesn't, hold as much
Mhm.
credence. But I just think, maybe the goal isn't to have a guard dog, but I think that if you can kind of keep your dog socialized in the most comfortable way you can, that's probably the best way to go. So I don't know if that completely answers, but
Well, I think what it does is actually answers it really, really well because I think number one, that statement has a little bit loaded into it by just using the word guard dog.
Right.
And I mean, I'll tell you, my dogs are not big dogs, and the number of FedEx delivery men that I've seen go running off my front porch just from the bark behind the door. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
I think a quote unquote guard dog,
Right.
little dogs bite just as much, right? So I really, really like that you've pointed out that thinking of any dog as a guard dog is probably not um, the best way to think about it. And what I really love is that what you've shared is something very actionable, which is to think of any dog in your family as a family member and a unique family member at
Right.
that. They're another member just like anyone else in the family. And I also think that for people who maybe are keeping their dogs outside, I think that that might even be um, just a bit of a light bulb idea to come from you that, you know, maybe that dog is not feeling as much a part of your family as you think they are feeling. Maybe they're feeling more like a resident renting time on your property versus, you know, as a part of the family. Because I don't know if everybody thinks that way, and it might just be a thought to consider focusing on more of the things that make that animal feel like a part of the family and not necessarily your bodyguard to the public.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll just a couple quick points. When I'm walking at night with one of my dogs, do I feel safer? Yes, I feel safer. Although, I can take care of myself, but I feel safer. The funny thing is I always think I have to protect my dogs.
Mm.
That's my thought. It's like I actually think like I have this thing where there's only two responsibilities you have to your dog, and it's to protect them and to have fun with them. That's it. Everything else, like we overlove our dogs, that's all gonna come. But to protect them and to have fun with them, I think. But I don't want to shame people who have their dogs outside either, because there's so many different varieties of dog stewardship or dog families. There was a dog adopted out from my local rescue that I absolutely adored. And he was going to a family that was going to have him live outside in a doghouse with another dog. And I know that he was going to get walked like 2 hours every morning, and that the family was going to be engaged with him. But I was still so sad about it because, of course, for me, ideally, your dogs live inside with you. That is the ideal. Okay. Um, and of course, like I said, I don't want to shame anybody. And we always want to support people no matter what. So if your dogs are living outside, how can you make them more a part of your family? Because some people don't have a choice either.
Mhm.
Um, and or that's just the way that they have chosen to do it either way. And absolutely, you can make your dog more of a family member. That dog that was adopted out, the family, I talked to them, and I happened to be at the shelter when they picked him up, and they were very nice, and they ended up sending me a video of the dad in the doghouse with them getting loved on. He looked very happy, the dog looked very happy, and I know they're taking good care of him. So while for me the ideal is that the dog, especially it's because of weather and socialization and all of that, the dogs want to be with the pack inside. But there's other scenarios too that people live in. You can always make your dog more a part of your life in some way, spending quality time with them. So
Mm. I
yeah.
love that. Yeah, I love that you've shared that because, yeah, it's not something that I've thought of much. But to your point, there's it just goes back to remind you that there are so many thousands of different scenarios that we all live in this world, and the dogs live in this world. And I love that you've shared that there may not necessarily be like right and wrong ways
Right.
to do it, but if you are focused on just trying to make them feel as much of a family member as you
Right.
can, that probably is going to go a long way. Yeah, I really like that. I'm glad that you've
Absolutely.
shared that.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead. Did you wanna
We
say
try
something
not to
else?
be judgmental. Of course we know we have ideas of what we think is best, But if we're going to be a community organization, we have to try and support people where they're at and see, can the dog come in at night? Maybe, can the dog
Mhm,
have like a space in the house, maybe that he or she can be in.
mhm.
Um, so I look a lot to organizations like Downtown Dog Rescue, who are my heroes, and how they interact with people. And there's no point to shame people. It's not going to help the dogs. It's not going to help the people. So yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a philosophy for all of life, really,
yeah,
there is never value in shaming other people or value in being highly judgmental of the way someone else is handling a situation
right.
because, we don't know, and I do truly believe that that perpetuates the problems more so than helping make them better. And when we talk about blockheaded dogs, I really do think the more we can have open, honest, understanding conversations and just try to meet each other and help each other and ultimately help the dogs. I mean, that's the dream, right? So, um,
Absolutely,
yeah, I think it's a good reminder for all of us to take with us today and on out into the world.
absolutely, yeah, agreed.
Um, so, let's wrap up with one simple idea, one
Okay,
thing that you think our listeners or viewers could do to help blockheaded dogs today.
okay. I kind of snuck in too, but
Good,
I
go for it.
I put it in one sentence, so it would
I
almost be
put
one.
it in
But
one
uh,
sentence. Yes. There
um,
we go.
challenge your perceptions and become informed.
Okay.
So I think we've talked about this. This is perfect. I didn't know this would naturally come up in our conversation today, but having some basic information and facts and knowing where to point people to goes a long way. So if we're informed, like go to Animal Farm Foundation, check out their All Dogs Are Individuals infographic, which is amazing. It has you saw it, Brandy, when I had the Pasadena Humane webinar. It is really cool. It teaches you so much about dogs and their DNA and how their breed is only like 0.25% of their DNA, and how once you know those things, it's like, wow, okay, now I have to check myself when I talk about how much I love pit bulls and what pit bulls are like. That's why you see me all the time trying to regulate, because I love them, but at the same time, I need to see them all as an individual. That's the best thing for them. So go to places like Animal Farm Foundation, the American Temperament Test Society, but the one place is that Animal Farm Foundation, and look up the facts and have those handy and point people to them. Because if you approach people in a respectful way and you give them some facts and do it in, do it with, in a very, I don't know, diplomatic way, you can really help change people's minds. And you can really help the dogs, I think, by doing that. So
Mm,
that's my number one thing. And yeah, comes, reach out to us. We'll point you in the right direction if you forget anything or need some guidance. But yes, challenge those perceptions.
mm. It's a really good one. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you if they'd like to contact you?
I love when people email me. So it's blockheadbrigade@gmail.com. It's super easy. You can totally reach out to me on Instagram, but I get so many messages that it gets lost. So I may get back to you, but then I'll be like, oh, I really want to talk to that person and I don't remember what their name was. So if you can email me, it's the best. So of course I'm on Instagram at Blockhead Brigade. We have our website, blockheadbrigade.org. And then the email is great. So I can have a conversation with you and connect.
Perfect. I love that. I love that. And we'll have all that information in the show notes along with a link to the infographic you described. I'm thinking, if you do one thing today, you go and you really like look at that infographic, like you'll retain the different facts in there just because
Yeah,
that's the way our brains work, right? So what a
absolutely.
cool idea. I'm definitely going to be doing that when we hang up. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your knowledge and your passion for these dogs with us. And I really hope that through this conversation, we picked up a few more advocates. Like we talked about, my friend Marissa says, the big dog, the underdog. That's who I want to fight for. So, and we even have
Absolutely.
like what's the word I'm looking for? The salute coming from yours. I love
Right?
it.
My
Like, come
dogs
on,
just,
guys,
can you hear them?
everybody.
They just chimed in. Somebody rang the doorbell. So, like, really? Um,
I
Thank
love
you,
it. It's
Brandy.
like, yeah, no,
Punctuation.
yeah.
That's the punctuation.
I was like, it's the perfect timing. It's like they're saluting, like, yes, please join us.
Yeah, fight for
I love
us.
it.
I love it.
I
Thank
love
you, Brandy, so
Yes,
much. What a great conversation.
yes. Thank you so much. And I will see you soon. And
Okay,
thanks, everybody. Bye.
bye.